The story begins in the year 2003. The world's most powerful country, the United States, and a controversial nation in the Middle East, Iraq tensions were already rising. But the real spark came from one event. The September 11th attacks, September 11th, 2001, when the United States faced one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in its history. Thousands of people lost their lives. And after that, America made a decision. We will no longer wait for threats. We will eliminate them before they emerge. The beginning of suspicion. The United States accused Iraq's president, Saddam Hussein, of possessing weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. Weapons so powerful, they could destroy entire cities within minutes. But the question was, did Iraq really have such weapons? Or was it just suspicion? The world divided. On one side was the United States, arguing that action was necessary. On the other side were several countries saying, "Show us the proof first." The United Nations began investigations. Inspectors went into Iraq. They searched multiple locations, but they found no solid evidence. But the decision was already made. The United States didn't wait. In March 2003, the Iraq War began. The operation was called Shock and Awe. In the darkness of the night, bombs rained down from the sky. The streets of Baghdad were burning. Chaos was everywhere. At first, it seemed easy. The U.S. military was extremely powerful. Within weeks, Iraq's forces retreated, and soon Saddam Hussein's government collapsed. The world thought the war is over. But the real story was just beginning. Hidden reality. This is the part that often doesn't appear clearly in the news, because the real war began after the government fell, and that war continued for years. When the war didn't end, it began. The government had fallen. Saddam Hussein had gone into hiding, and Iraq was officially declared free. But the ground reality was very different. Power vacuum. The biggest threat. When a strong government suddenly collapses, it creates an empty space. A power vacuum. And that's exactly what happened in Iraq. The police system broke down. The army was dissolved. Government institutions collapsed. And then, no law in the streets. Looting everywhere. Fear among the people. The rise of insurgency. Gradually, armed groups began to emerge. They were called insurgents. They didn't fight direct battles, hidden attacks, sudden explosions, then they disappeared. For American soldiers, this was the most dangerous situation because the enemy wasn't visible. Every day was a threat in Baghdad and other cities. Bomb blasts became common. Roadside bombs, suicide attacks, sniper fire. Every day became a new risk for the soldiers, a nightmare for America. What initially seemed like an easy victory had now turned into an endless war. Thousands of soldiers were deployed, but full control was still out of reach. International pressure increased. Questions started rising around the world. Where are the WMDs? Was this war justified? Even the United Nations was under pressure, but the truth was, it wasn't easy to turn back now. A situation like civil war inside Iraq, conflicts between different groups began to intensify. Sunni versus Shia tensions, internal fighting, and civilians suffered the most. The biggest question. Now the question had changed from why did the war start to how will this war end? Hidden truth. This was the phase where it became clear toppling a regime is easy, but building a stable system is much harder. Truth, consequences, and lessons. Years passed. The war continued. But the question that started it all had now become even bigger. Were WMDs ever found? The weapons that were used as the reason for the Iraq War were never found. No chemical stockpiles, no solid evidence of a nuclear program. This raised one major question across the world. Was this war based on false information? Impact on trust. The credibility of the United States was questioned. Many countries said, if there was no proof, then why such a massive war? Even the role of the United Nations came under debate. The biggest loss. The impact of this war was not limited to soldiers. Millions of Iraqi civilians were affected. Thousands of soldiers lost their lives. The entire country fell into instability. Cities that were once normal had now turned into conflict zones. A new threat emerges. Taking advantage of this chaos, extremist groups rose. Slowly, a new name emerged. ISIS and Iraq got pulled into yet another conflict. Did the war ever truly end? Years later, the United States began gradually withdrawing its troops. But did the war really end, or are its effects still ongoing? This question is still debated today. The biggest lesson. One thing became clear from this entire story. Intelligence is not always accurate. Starting a war is easy, but ending it is the hardest part. Reality check. This wasn't just a war. It was an example of how one decision can change the entire world. Final thought. If decisions had been different at that time, if the proof had been clear, history might have been different. And even today, whenever a major country considers military action, the Iraq War stands as a warning. Ending line for impact. Not every war is fought only on the battlefield. Sometimes the decisions behind it can change the fate of the entire world.